Jan with Jan's Jewelry Supplies. Welcome to another soldering video. Today we're going to be making this simple Christmas tree pendant. Once I've figured out my design, I like to go ahead and lay out my pieces so I can easily transfer them over to the clay. For this project, I'm going to need 10 15 by 7 Navettes with settings, 6 12 millimeter Rivolis with settings, and 1 jump ring. I'm going to go ahead and lay out my Play-Doh. I'm going to roll it out nice and flat, make it about 1 inch larger than the piece that I'm working on. Now that my Play-Doh is nice and flat, I'm going to go ahead and start transferring my stones and settings over to the clay. I preset all of the stones just to make this quicker. To learn how to set the stones, you can go to our very first video and see that there. When I place my stones, I want to get them very close together so that it is easier to bridge the gap between the stones and settings. Now that I have all my stones in place, I want to make sure that it's all nice and level. As you can see, all the settings are close together, so it'll be really easy to bridge the gap in between the settings. I'm going to go ahead and begin soldering this piece. I'm going to be using a torch for this project. All of the settings are brass, so I'm not too concerned about turning my metal dark. You're just going to heat the metal and then push the solder down in between the two settings. They're so close together, if you just take your solder and push it down in between the two settings, it should join the settings. If they're very far apart at all, then you should be able to take and run the solder down one side and drag it over to the other setting. If you get them too far apart, you're not going to be able to fill that gap. With the exception of the jump ring, I am finished soldering this piece. As you can see, there is solder at every single joint. I'm just going to pull the piece out of the Play-Doh and test it to see how sturdy it is. It seems to be very sturdy. I am going to push it back down into the clay and attach the jump ring. You want to make sure it's pushed down into the clay and that all the settings are secure so that you don't unsolder your work. I'm just going to use a third hand to attach the jump ring, or at least to hold it in place while I solder it. When I solder a jump ring, I like to take the area where it's split and make that go down into the solder so my jump ring is completely closed. It just gives it a little more strength. Just going to place the jump ring onto the third hand so it will hold it in place for me while I solder. Just slide it down and put it right at the tip of the Christmas tree. Just applying some heat with my torch. I'm going to take the solder and touch the bottom portion of the jump ring and drag it over to the very top setting. Once I'm done soldering, I'm just going to lift my piece out of the Play-Doh, and I will be putting it in a bucket of water with just a little bit of soap and warm water. I'm just using a toothbrush to scrub off any remaining residue from the clay. If there's anything stuck in the crevices, you can just use a pick to remove any of that. Generally on a larger piece, you're not going to have a lot of clay stuck in the crevices of the piece. You want to just dry your piece off. Just tap it dry. When you're finished with your piece, you're going to want to leave it upside down on a dry cloth or dry paper towel, just to let any remaining water drain out of it. Otherwise your stones may get cloudy. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.